on the issues that matter. All right. Now here again, this is where it became very important for us to let management know, all right, when we've changed how we do this, and when you see a high-risk issue in front of you now, pay attention. Now, we're still using this qualitative term, high risk, but that's mapped back to predefined levels, all right, as you know, approved by management. So these numbers equal high risk to them. So it makes it a simpler comparison. Management, they want numbers, you know, kind of, they want there to be numbers, and they want rigor behind this stuff. But at the end of the day, a lot of times they want a stoplight, red, yellow, green sort of position, because they're in a hurry, right? And they don't have time to analyze a lot of numbers. But they really do like the fact that there's rigor and numbers behind the analysis. So in another case, we had one of the big 4 consulting firms come in and do an attack and penetration exercise. And they had a number of findings that they characterized as high risk. And I looked at those and just intuitively I said, oh, I don't think so. So I pushed back. And I said, I don't think these are high risk. And, well, you know, we're the experts here. You brought us in. You're paying us a lot of money. Of course it's high risk. And I don't think so. So I went up to the whiteboard and we broke down each one of those issues. And at the end of the day, they conceded every point. Not one of those was truly high risk. Which means as an organization, we could be more cost effective in our applying resources to managing these issues. We didn't have to pull a fire alarm. We didn't have to stop production on things. We could be more deliberate and effective in dealing with the issues. And let me tell you, management loves that. They see tremendous value all of a sudden when you're able to provide that kind of clarity and opportunity to them. So, in another instance, we had identified a risk issue, significant risk issue that we thought needed to be addressed. And we analyzed 3 different approaches for mitigating that risk. Option A, best practice, and two approaches that you wouldn't characterize as best practice. You know, it isn't common practice. After analysis, we determined option B was likely to be every bit as effective as best practice, but a whole lot less expensive. Guess which one management chose? And they were thrilled to have the opportunity to make that choice. Again, if all you come to the table with is, now, best practice, everybody else does it this way. You know, sometimes that's going to be exactly the right thing to do. That may be the perfect solution for that circumstance. All right? Sometimes it's not. But as a responsible professional, it is critical that we can distinguish between the two when they're important and when it's the appropriate solution and when it's not. Don't get me wrong, best practice has an important role to play. But misused or abused, I refer to it as the Lemming approach to risk management. All right? And it really feels that way sometimes. So, enough said about that. All right, so some of the benefits from taking this risk-based approach. Tangible benefits, and some of them are fairly obvious. More accurate information for management. Things aren't as inflated. All right? More useful information. And again, given more time, I could talk about things like distinguishing or identifying when there's fragility in the scenario. All right? Because you may have a situation where that risk point on that chart may look like it's in great shape. It may be low in the lower left quadrant, something like that. But it may be fragile. There may be one control that if it fails, that goes to heck in a handbasket. All right? That's a critical piece of information for management. All right? And then there's this notion of instability. You may have an environment where the threat event frequency is really low, and your controls stink or don't exist, but because you have this low threat event frequency, you still have a low loss event frequency, and as a result, that risk point will be, potentially at the left side of the chart, or the left side of the graph. But what's going on there is you're rolling the dice every day. You're trusting the luck. That's an unstable condition. You're not in control of it. That is critical information for management. If all you come to the table with is this risk point or some statement of high, medium, or low, all right, you're not giving them enough information to make an informed decision. So these sorts of important points are fundamental to doing our jobs well and providing management with the information they need. Cost-effective solutions, cited that one example. Better able to prioritize. I mean, that's huge for organizations. As a practicing CISO for years, one of my biggest challenges was prioritization. I have way more to do than I have dollars and cents or political goodwill to get done. I have to know which is more important. Now, if amongst the things you have to do, you have education awareness, and intrusion detection, and identity and access management, and blah, 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 all these different things that are dissimilar, all right? How do you prioritize that? All right? The only way you can prioritize is understanding the effect of each of those from a risk perspective. So, and then fewer fire drills, again, which gets down to being more cost-effective and prioritizing. The intangible benefits were important. For the people in my organization, they felt far more comfortable and confident in their ability to defend their conclusions and recommendations. And that was an intangible benefit to them as a professional. And the other intangible was the increased credibility for us as an organization within the business. Management viewed us differently. They came to us. We began being viewed as trusted advisors, which is a term that's overused, but it's an important thing. They began viewing us as someone there to help them rather than somebody there as an obstacle. You know, they're trying to manage risk with limited resources across a lot of different risk domains. They've got insurance risk and investment risk and market risk and goodness knows what other risk to deal with, all right? And IT and information risk is just another one of those silos for them to manage. And so their confidence in our ability to provide them with the means of being better at managing that was really important. And it changed the relationship. So, having said all that, anybody have any questions? Hopefully questions. Hard questions, easy questions, any question. If nobody asks questions, then I become afraid that y'all slept through this. And I saw eyes closed, but I figure you're just listening harder when your eyes are closed. I didn't hear anybody snoring. So,
Jack, I have a question, or actually more of a comment that struck me when you were talking, that just towards the end of your presentation when you talked about the Big Four accounting firm came in, made suggestions of best practices and things to be do, you pushed back and they conceded on some of these points. You had to have had some sleepless nights that had maybe a low probability of something happening, but a high impact event that happened, and the C-level and the company would have said, this is exactly what the big accounting firm, the big consulting firm said we needed to guard against, assuming that one of their best practices had to adjust this. You had to cause yourself some very sleepless nights that even though if you'd have gone against the experts, that you're putting your neck out there.
Yeah, that was concern. There was risk from my perspective in going down this road and developing this stuff and relying on it. And yes, especially at first, I wrestled with that a lot. And especially when I would come up against my own demons, if you will, where I would have been I had for years practiced security in this fashion, and now I'm learning that, you know what, I was doing it wrong in that aspect of it. That didn't feel good. And I challenged myself. I said, well, I can't have been wrong for all those years. It must be the new stuff I'm developing that's wrong. And I would beat that up pretty thoroughly, trying to, become comfortable with the result. And in every instance, I've been wrong all along. But, to your point, yes, there was that concern about if I made some risk statement and something bad happened because management, had gone against best practice because of my risk analysis. I managed that risk by, again, informing them of the method of my analysis, making sure they knew it was not a precise statement, that there were probabilities both in terms of frequency and impact, right? And that there are always tail events, right? These